If you're new here, my name is Isabella. This is where we have real, honest conversations about attraction, female psychology, emotional connection, and how relationships actually work in today's world. And today, we're talking about something most men completely misunderstand. A lot of men believe that the more they chase a woman, the more attractive they become to her emotionally. So they keep texting first, keep checking in, keep making themselves constantly available. Because deep down, they believe stopping means losing her completely. But honestly, what many men never realize is this: sometimes the moment a man stops chasing is the moment a woman finally starts feeling his absence emotionally. Because when someone becomes constantly available, predictable, and always present, the mind slowly stops paying attention the same way. But the moment that energy changes, suddenly her thoughts become louder, her emotions become more active, and questions she never had to ask before start appearing in her mind naturally. Because what actually happens inside a woman's mind when a man pulls his energy back is much deeper psychologically than most men have ever been told. The first thing that happens when you stop chasing is her mind becomes louder, not quieter. And honestly, this is the part most men never see because externally it may look like nothing is happening at all. So many men instantly assume she moved on, stopped caring, or forgot about them completely. But psychologically, that is usually not what is happening inside her mind. When your attention was constant, your presence slowly became emotionally predictable to her. Not necessarily unwanted, just expected. She knew you would text first, check in, stay emotionally available, and continue showing interest no matter what happened. And because of that certainty, she never had to fully feel your emotional absence. But the moment you stop chasing quietly, something changes internally for her. Suddenly, her mind starts asking questions it never needed to ask before. Why did his energy change? Did I lose him emotionally? Is he talking to somebody else now? Why do I suddenly miss his attention more than before? And honestly, this is where many women begin thinking about a man much more deeply than they ever did while he was constantly available. Because absence creates emotional awareness in ways constant presence often cannot. The second thing that happens when you stop chasing is she starts questioning everything she thought she understood about you. And honestly, this creates much more emotional impact than most men realize because certainty keeps people emotionally relaxed, but uncertainty forces the mind to become active. Before you were easy for her to understand, she knew you liked her. She knew you would reach out. She knew your attention was always there. And because of that, she never had to think deeply about you emotionally. You became emotionally predictable. But the moment that pursuit disappears, her perception of you starts shifting completely. Now she begins wondering if she misunderstood you the entire time. Did he lose interest? Was I too distant? Did I take his attention for granted? Was he actually more valuable than I realized? And honestly, discomfort creates emotional engagement. The moment certainty disappears, emotional curiosity starts growing automatically. She begins replaying past conversations differently. Small moments suddenly feel more important than before. Even your silence starts carrying emotional meaning inside her mind. And this is where many women slowly become emotionally intrigued by a man they previously thought they had completely figured out. The third thing that happens when you stop chasing is your absence slowly becomes more emotionally attractive than your constant presence ever was. And honestly, many men struggle accepting this because they believe attraction only grows through more effort, more attention, and more availability. But human psychology does not always work that way emotionally. When someone knows they can access you at any moment without uncertainty, your presence slowly becomes emotionally familiar. Again, not necessarily unwanted, just expected. She knows you will always be there, always reply, always pursue, always keep the connection alive no matter what happens. But the moment that pattern disappears, your value starts feeling different psychologically. Now, there is uncertainty. And uncertainty creates emotional attention automatically. Suddenly, she notices your absence in places where your energy used to exist naturally. She notices when you Stop reaching out first. She notices when your attention is no longer constantly surrounding her emotionally. And honestly, that space often makes your presence feel stronger than before because now she actually has room to feel what is missing emotionally. Because people often realize emotional value most clearly after the constant availability disappears. The fourth thing that happens when you stop chasing is she finally starts confronting her real feelings for you instead of simply reacting to your attention. And honestly, this is where things become much deeper psychologically because many women do not fully recognize their emotional attachment to a man while he is constantly pursuing them. When you are always chasing, her role stays emotionally passive. She does not need to ask herself difficult questions because your attention already keeps the connection emotionally alive. She can simply receive your effort without fully examining what she actually feels inside. But the moment your pursuit stops, something changes internally. Now, she has to face a question she avoided before. Do I actually miss him or do I only miss the attention he gave me? And honestly, many women become surprised by their own answer because suddenly small things begin triggering emotional reactions she did not expect. A memory reminds her of you. A song brings your energy back into her mind. She checks her phone hoping your name appears, even though she refuses to admit it openly. And this is where real emotional attachment often becomes clear for the first time because now the feelings are coming from inside her own mind, not from your constant pursuit emotionally surrounding her all the time. The fifth thing that happens when you stop chasing is she often feels your silence much more deeply than she will ever admit openly. And honestly, this is where many men become confused because externally, she may still appear completely calm, normal, and emotionally unaffected. So naturally, men assume nothing mattered to her. But psychologically, people often hide emotional impact much better than they reveal it publicly, especially when pride, vulnerability, and emotional uncertainty become involved. Because admitting your absence affected her means admitting she cared more than she showed before. And honestly, many women struggle with that emotionally because it forces them to confront feelings they were previously avoiding comfortably. So instead of openly expressing it, she often internalizes it quietly. She checks whether you viewed her stories, notices when you are online but do not contact her, replays old conversations privately, thinks about what she would say if you suddenly reached out again. And the interesting part is that none of this usually becomes visible externally. On the outside, she may still act emotionally controlled, but internally, your silence often creates much more emotional movement than most men ever realize. Because people who truly feel nothing usually do not spend time emotionally monitoring your absence at all. The sixth thing that happens when you stop chasing is you finally begin seeing her real level of interest clearly instead of staying trapped inside confusion. And honestly, this is one of the most important parts psychologically because constant chasing often hides the truth from men emotionally. When you are always initiating, always reaching out first, always carrying the energy of the connection, she never truly has to reveal how much effort she is willing to make herself. Your pursuit keeps everything moving, so her real emotional investment stays hidden comfortably in the background. But the moment you step back, the dynamic changes completely. Now she has to decide something internally. Does she actually want to keep this connection alive emotionally, or was she simply enjoying the attention, validation, and emotional comfort you kept providing constantly? And honestly, what happens next usually tells you everything. A woman who genuinely feels emotionally connected will usually find some way to reconnect eventually, even subtly. Maybe a message, a reaction, a random excuse to start conversation again. Because emotionally, losing your presence completely does not feel right to her internally. But if nothing happens at all, then painful as it may feel, you finally receive clarity instead of emotional confusion. And honestly, clarity is always healthier than endlessly chasing someone who was never emotionally moving towards you in the first place. But a man focused on his own purpose, routines, goals, peace, and emotional stability naturally feels calmer, grounded, and more emotionally attractive because attraction responds strongly to emotional energy. And this is why many women become much more emotionally drawn toward a man after he stops chasing constantly. Not because he became colder emotionally, but because he finally stopped abandoning himself psychologically just to keep somebody else interested. So, after everything we talked about today, I want you to understand one thing very clearly. Stopping the chase is not about manipulation, revenge, or trying to make someone panic emotionally. And honestly, many men misunderstand this completely online. The real point is much deeper psychologically. A man who constantly chases someone who is not equally choosing him usually starts abandoning himself slowly in the process. The seventh thing that happens when you stop chasing is she finally gives you her real emotional attention. And honestly, this is the biggest misunderstanding many men have about attraction because they believe constant pursuit keeps a woman emotionally focused on them. But in many situations, the opposite happens psychologically. When everything is predictable, emotionally available, and guaranteed, the mind slowly relaxes. There is no emotional tension, no uncertainty, no curiosity forcing deeper thought. Your attention simply becomes part of her normal routine. But the moment you stop chasing, her emotional awareness becomes active again. Now she notices your absence. Now she notices the silence. Now she notices the emotional space where your energy used to exist constantly. And honestly, this is where many women begin thinking about a man more intensely than ever before, because now their own emotions are involved actively instead of passively receiving attention all the time. And listen carefully, because this matters most. This is not about manipulation, not about punishment, not about pretending not to care. A man who stops chasing because he genuinely values his own peace, priorities, confidence, and emotional self respect naturally becomes more attractive because his entire energy changes psychologically. And women feel that difference immediately. And honestly, the biggest shift is not even what happens inside her mind when you stop chasing. It is what starts happening inside yours psychologically. Because the moment a man stops constantly running after someone who is not equally moving toward him emotionally, he slowly starts reconnecting with himself again. His focus changes, his emotional energy changes, his self respect starts returning gradually. Instead of waking up every day obsessed with whether somebody texted back, whether somebody still feels interested, whether somebody is emotionally validating him constantly, he starts putting that energy back into his own life again. And honestly, women feel this difference immediately. A man emotionally consumed by chasing often feels anxious, emotionally scattered, and approval seeking without realizing it.